Hello and welcome to this webinar, the seventh in our Awakening Your Potential Leadership series, 10 Ways to Unlock Greatness. I am your moderator, Jenny Alton from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. So the topics for this last webinar of the series, hard to believe we are at the end of 7. Our topics are getting a return on your failures and fulfill your potential and die empty. Your presenter is, of course, Chad Reyes, author and renowned coach of Lion's Pride Leadership. This webinar is brought to you by the New York Small Business Development Center network of 20 campus-based centers and many more outreach offices located across New York State, along with a central office based in Albany. The NYSBDC is a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. Our free advising, education, research, and advocacy services are made possible by funding from the SBA, New York State, and our host campuses. So you know, we are recording today. We will share a link to the recording with attendees in the next few days in a follow-up email. Attendees are muted and will not be on camera. Your chats will only be visible to me, our presenter, and our behind-the-scenes helper. If you have questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A box as they come up. You can open Zoom's Q&A box from the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll save questions for a Q&A session at the end of the presentation to make sure Chad can get through all of his material today. And that is all the housekeeping I need to do. And I will now turn the time over to Chad.
Thank you, Jenny. Excited to be with you guys and excited for this last session. I can't believe that we literally are on the last part of this series. You know, I'm gonna jump over this video. Let's go through that. I'm gonna jump over this video and really go to the topic for today. As you know, as I was preparing for this and preparing right before a little bit, I'm thinking about what is the impact that this book and the content that we shared can make. And I think it really narrows it down to these last two topics, because most people are fearful of failure. They're fearful of failure. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I'm going to talk about how we can maximize our potential, which is really the whole purpose of this series, right? So just want to throw this out there that on the QR code right there, if you're enjoying this series, if you're enjoying the lessons that I've been teaching, we do a complimentary video every week on a different topic, so you can see the last 8 weeks what the topics were. So if you're interested, you can scan the QR code and just subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that will allow you to get access to all the videos that come up ongoing. Like I said, we put one out every single week on leadership principles and just to add value to your life. So let's jump on in and let's move into it. So I'm going to be sharing with you right now a story, and I want you to ask yourself this question: who is this person? Okay, it's a famous person, but who is this person? So I'm going to walk you through it. They were born in 1946. They moved to New York City in 1970 to pursue a dream of becoming an actor. However, all seemed to fail when they received tremendous rejection and many people telling them no. He talked funny, he walked funny, and he couldn't act. He was forced to sell his dog for $25 just to pay his electric bill. He was rejected 1,500 times by talent scouts, agents, and everyone in the film industry. He was broke and homeless at one point. He lived and slept in the New Jersey Port Authority bus terminal for 3 weeks while trying to put money together for an apartment. After writing the script for the movie, he was offered a tremendous amount of money with one caveat: he was not the person in the movie. The offer was raised to $325,000 if he didn't act in the movie. Now, mind you, this is many, many, many years ago. This is 45 years ago. Eventually, he accepted 35,000 and a percentage of the film sales. The film grossed over $200 million. Collectively, all the films that he's done is $4 billion. It's Rocky Balboa. And what's very interesting about that is that I want to give you a formula today of getting a return on your failure. And I don't know about you, but if you're anything like me, I was terrified of failing. Because failure to me meant I was a failure. And the last thing I think you or I want to do is be failures. But when we have a process to getting a return on failure, then we don't look at failure as a bad thing, because then we can get a return on it so that we can keep growing. You know, I want to share with you these statistics. 31% of Americans are terrified or afraid of failure. That means 3 out of every 10 people look at failure as a terrible thing. Now watch this. This is even more intriguing. 90% of CEOs agree that failure is their main cause of distress. You know, what's interesting is as I get the opportunity to work with high-level leaders, the higher they go, the more they are scared of failure. Just hear what I just said. The higher they go, the more they are scared of failure. And you can see that based on what I just put up there. You know, I love what Albert Einstein said. He said that success is failure in progress. So let's talk about this. I want to show you, how do we get return on failures? I think all of us would agree that failure is not an if, it's a when. You're going to fail. I'm going to fail. Now, we discussed about this in role versus identity, that we have to separate our role from our identity, because that's going to help give us some really effective leadership skills and abilities. But when we look at failure, I want you to embrace this cycle. So I'm going to share it right now, and then I'm going to unpack it for you. The first is this. Whenever we test something, there is a probability for it to fail. Okay. If you try something, there's no guarantee that it's going to work. Actually, if you're trying something and it's big enough, there's a higher probability that it's not going to work. So the higher, the better return and the potential of that test, the higher probability that it won't work. But then that moves us to the next part, which is fail. You see, if we embrace failure, it changes everything. Because then we no longer look at the instant as a failure. Then we go to the third, which is learn. So we learn from that failure, which then brings us to improve, and then takes us to re-enter. So right now, what I want to do is I just want to talk about each one of them. So I'm going to go back and let's just talk about test for a moment. Test is so important. And please hear me out on this. And I'm only sharing it because I know what it feels like to do this. You will not test if you cannot embrace failure. Just hear that for a moment. You will not try something because in trying something, there's the potential that it's not going to work. So as a leader, we have to get comfortable with using this cycle of success to get a return on our failures, because if we're going to get a return on our failures, we have to try. And I'll share this with you, that if you don't believe your future is brighter than your past or where you're coming from, you won't test. Think about that for a moment. There's a risk to testing. There's a risk that it may not work and it may fail, and then we have to learn and improve and re-enter. But if your future of where you're trying to go with your company or your division is not brighter, you won't try something. Why? Because you do not want to fail. So I guess my question is, what's an area that you have to start testing again? What's an area in your leadership that you have to test? Because testing is not a bad thing. There's many things that my team and I have tried that don't work. That I'm never going to be, don't miss this one. I'm never going to be remembered for what didn't work. I'm going to be remembered and I'm going to make an impact in people's lives for the things that actually did. So when you're testing, all you're doing is trying stuff to make sure that you find a formula that could work. But then you go to fail. You know, the thing about failure is this, is that success and failure, they have to be best friends. If you think about anyone who's had wild success in their life, they've had failures, but they haven't been defined by the failures. They allow that when something doesn't work, they allow them to go through the learn, improve, re-enter model. So success and failures need to be close. And this is the thing that I would say in failure or fail, is make failure your teacher. Think about that for a moment. If you're willing to look at failure as your teacher, then you're willing to say, what didn't work? Let me spend some time understanding why it didn't work. And then how can I get better? You know what I see most people do? They test, they fail, they re-enter. They test, they fail, they re-enter. They test, they fail, they re-enter. If you can make tweaks, there's things in my business, and I've shared this, that does not work. And we're testing stuff, and it's not working, but there are things we're learning and we're improving and getting back in the game. And I just encourage you to keep doing the same. Let's move to learn. I want to give you something one of my coaches said many years ago when it comes to learn. He said this, he said, we live in a school called life, called Earth. Every person and event contains a valuable lesson. Lessons you resist will persist and they repeat. A lesson will be repeated until learned, and every time a lesson is repeated, it becomes more painful. I'm going to read that again, because when he shared this with me, it hit me hard. He said, we live in a school called life. Every person and event contains a valuable lesson. Lessons you resist will persist and they repeat. A lesson will be repeated until learned. Every time a lesson is repeated, it becomes more painful. Wow. I've been there. Then we got to improve. So if we go to that part of improve now, so we're learning the lesson. Now we need to improve. And how do we improve? I would share with you that you have to have a system of how you're going to improve. I use a system called Plan Ahead. I've shared it with you. Predetermine what a win looks like, lay out your goals, adjust priorities, notify key team members. We've shared that in previous videos, so if you want to go back, you can listen to it. And it's in the book. But you have to have a system to improve. Improvement is not based on good intentions. Improvement is being intentionally good, having a system of how you go back and improve. This is a system that you can rely on to get return on failures. You know, I'll say one more thing on failures is that, and I don't know if I'm speaking to someone right now, if you failed before in things and now you've stopped trying or testing things, just know this, that you're not a failure. What you tried doing didn't work, but that doesn't make you a failure. It makes what you tried doing. And if you're in that spot, I'd encourage you, just step out and try something again. Try something that you haven't done, that you've been wanting to do. And this time, go at it saying, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. Either way, I'm not a failure. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to improve. And I'm going to get back in the game. This is something that small businesses should be using all day long, because major corporations and the greatest technology companies in the world build this into their infrastructure and training and development. Test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. So that kind of leads me to this next part. And this next part is, and this is the last chapter of the book, that there are enemies to your potential. I'm just going to read you a couple of quotes. The greatest threat to being all you could be is the satisfaction with who you are. The greatest threat to all you could be is the satisfaction with who you are. It was Miles Monroe. You know, there's three things that we talk about at Lions Pride. We talk about awaken, empower, and equip. I just want to give this to you because everything we do, you'll see all of the video series we've done, any books I write, any articles we write, any training and development we do for companies, anything that we do is around three things: awaken, empower, and equip. So our goal is to awaken people to their potential. So most people don't realize that they have more in them. They give up when they didn't even realize that they had more in them. There was more potential in them. So our goal is to awaken you to your potential. The next is empower. Empower you to want to reach that potential. You know, what's interesting is when you see something's possible, now you got to have the motivation and the determination and the discipline to want to go after it. So that's the empower side. I want what I see now. And then the last one is equip. There's nothing more frustrating in life than being awakened to your potential and empowered to want to accomplish it and not having the tools and the skill set to develop into that vision that you see in your mind and your heart. So our everything that we do while we exist is to awaken, empower, and equip leaders to reach their full potential. And talking about that is I want to talk to you now about these 13 things that rob people of their potential. Okay? There's 13 of them. I'm going to go quick through them because I want to open up for some questions. So I'm going to move pretty quickly, but that's going to give you more time to ask your questions. So if you have a question, put it in there because I'm going to go pretty fast right now through these. But these are the 13. You ready? The first is the opinion of others. Do you know that? I was just sharing this with Jenny, that the leaders who try to get everyone to buy into them, they're the ones that have the least impact. And the reason is this, is that if you are allowing the opinions of others to lead you, to direct you, to guide you, it's going to rob you of potential. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't listen to people. It doesn't mean that you're ignorant. It just means you're not driven by the opinions of others. I say this often. The reason why I'm the CEO of our company is because I am the one leading us in a direction. I'm hearing what people are saying. I'm understanding what's going on. But at the end of the day, I'm leading. Many of you have been put in positions to lead. And you may be robbing your potential of leading because you're so focused on the opinions of others. Let me give you the second one, fear. Many years ago, I had a coach that said, fear, false evidence appearing real. Think about that for a moment. False evidence appearing real. Fear will rob us. Fear will rob us of our potential because it'll stop us. And one of the statistics that I've heard about fear is 95% of the things that we're fearful of never even happens. That is staggering. We put so much energy, we put so much time into things that will not even occur. My friend, push fear away, focus on where you're going, become real clear on what you're trying to accomplish. What's another enemy of your potential? Discouragement. Some people get discouraged. So they try something, it didn't work, and that's it. I'm done. Keep pushing forward. Most times, the thing that you want requires 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the case of Rocky Balboa or Sylvester Stallone, 1,500 times he was rejected. 1,500 times. Don't allow discouragement to rob you of your potential. Procrastination. You know how many people I know? Oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get that done. Oh, yeah, we'll get to it. Yep, it's going to happen. And then nothing happens. You know why? I say to leaders all the time, I say, show me two things and I'll know where you're going. Show me your checkbook and show me your calendar. And the reason why is nothing becomes real until you put money and time behind it. So most people who procrastinate, they're not willing to put their time behind it and they're not willing to put their money behind it. That's how I know when someone's serious, when they put their time and their money now behind something. Procrastination gets you to think that the future is going to get brighter, but it doesn't. Nothing changes. The potential you have inside of you, nothing happens until you put action behind it. Past failures. We spoke about that. I'm not going to go much in depth on it. You are not who you were because you failed. You are a person that has been designed perfectly and wonderfully. And because of that, you have a 10 on your forehead. And sometimes, and this is chapter 6 of role versus identity. Sometimes maybe you're operating as a 2 or 3 in your role, but your identity is you are a 10 that sometimes operates as a 2 or 3 in your role of mom, dad, company, owner. Distractions. As a leader, your ability to focus on the things that you need to accomplish and not be distracted by everything is so key. Because you want to know what? The second you go public, hear this out. Every person that has a vision and they go public, that vision will be tested for authenticity. Hear what I just said. If you have a vision for your company or you have a vision for your division and you publicly state it, the second you publicly state it, I will bet you that you are going to be tested on if that vision is authentic or not. And how? Distractions from everywhere. Great leaders can have all those things occurring and yet stay focused so they can reach their potential. Traditions. We've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. Wrong environments. You know, people are like tofu. When you take tofu and you put it in a pot, whatever seasoning is around that tofu, the tofu takes the seasoning of. The thing that robs people of potential is that they put themselves in the wrong seasoning. They have the wrong environment around them, and then it becomes very hard for them to grow. If you have the wrong players on the team, sometimes it'll corrupt the whole team. You have to make sure that you're putting yourselves in the right environment to reach your potential. Comparison. Hey, Chad's doing this or Jenny's doing that. When we start comparing ourselves to what others are doing, they don't have the same gifts. They don't have the same talents. What happens if you're comparing yourself to someone who doesn't have your ability, but yet you're comparing yourself saying you're doing better than they are, but they didn't have your ability. Maybe they didn't have that calling on their life. Comparison robs us of potential. Disobedience. You ever hear that inner voice or the gut that says don't do it and you do it anyways? That's disobedience. Opposition, where people put up resistance against what you're doing. I think about it. I've mentioned to you, I'm a person of faith. I think about the book of Nehemiah. He's building this wall. He's got 50 days, and there's opposition coming. They're trying to stop him from building this wall. And he says, I'm not coming down from the wall for meetings. I'm not coming down from the wall for anything other than I'm focused on what I need to get done. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter the distractions. It doesn't matter the opposition. I am focused where I'm going. Pressure, societal pressures. You know, this thing is amazing, but it robs so many people of potential because they spend so much time on the phone looking at things that will never help them get closer to the purpose and vision that's in their heart. How do you stop? And how do you build healthy boundaries around the things in your life so that you can fulfill your potential? And then the last one is success. And I'll share this with you. Working with leaders, I've been so blessed to be able to work with super successful families, a lot of assets. And I will tell you this, that success more than anything has robbed people. More people have been robbed by their potential, by success, than any other distraction in their life. So I'll finish with this, and Jenny, we're going to open up for Q&A. I'll finish with this, is that some years back, I heard Miles Monroe. He asked this question. He said, where is the wealthiest part of the world? And my question to you today is, where is the wealthiest part of the world? What he said next changed my life forever. He said, the wealthiest part of the world is down the block from your house. It's the cemetery. Because he said, in the cemetery is all of the dreams, the vision, the businesses, the people that you were supposed to invest in, the potential. He said, the cemetery is the wealthiest part of the world because so many people take all of those gifts, talents, dreams, visions, potential, and put it in the grave. And he said, my job is to walk into your life and help you rob the grave and die empty. And what I'm hoping, what I shared with you today, what I've shared with you over the last 7 lessons, is helping you rob the grave. Because the truth of it is that you can't do anything once you take it to the grave. But if you start moving now, you start acting now, guess what? You can. You can reach your potential. And I can tell you this, I was just sharing this at an event recently with a group of leaders, partner at a large accounting firm. And I said to them, I said, the company doesn't deserve necessarily for you to do that. Now you should want to give everything you have because you always want to give more than you take. But what I said to them is this, I said, you know who deserves your best? Even if you don't want to give your best to your company, your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews, your spouse, those people that you deeply love, they deserve your best. Because when we don't bring our best to work, they see it. When we don't bring our best to friendships, they see it. And what we do is not only do we rob ourselves of our potential, but we plant seeds for them to rob themselves of their potential. So my friend, as I wrap this up, I want to encourage you to give your best, always giving your best, because everyone is watching, including the ones you love. Hey, thank you for allowing me in your life. I'm super excited that I was able to spend the last 7 lessons with you, and let's just jump into some Q&A.
Thank you. Chad, could I have you go back one slide
Yep,
to those 13 items?
Yep,
I think
hold on
someone
one
was
second.
writing them down and wanted to make sure they got them all.
Yep. And Jenny, they are in the book, and I go through it much further. If someone did want to pick up the book, I go through it much further. I didn't have the time to go through in depth of what that, each one is, but I do go further into it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have some very good questions coming in already.
Right.
Oh, yes, and if you want to go ahead and put up your slide for your
Right there.
if anybody wants to give feedback on today's session or hasn't gotten that first free chapter of the book, you can scan that QR code. I'm also going to drop the link for that into the chat. This is optional, but if you would like to do it, you are welcome to do so. Okay. So this person has put a few scenarios here, so we'll go through them one at a time.
Go ahead.
So, what is the best way to get over the fear or anxiety of, and then this scenario, the growing fear of failure as we continue to invest more and more hours over a very long period of time? They said that the fear grows as they put in more time because it's more investment adding up.
Can I answer that? Let's jump in there.
Yes, that's where we're going to
So,
pause.
perfect. So the first thing is this, and I've heard my friend and mentor John Maxwell say this, and now I've embraced it. I mean, I always believed it. What John does for me is he doesn't share things that I typically don't know. He gives me language around things that I've been thinking. That's the powerful part of mentors. So he said this, Jenny. He said that nothing is ever wasted. It's just stored up. You see, one of the things as we go further to answer that person's question, as we go further into a venture, as we go further into something, if we look at it as a dead end, meaning, well, if it doesn't work, I lose everything, it really is not the case, because you get to take all the wisdom, experience, and lessons to the next area of your life. And that has always helped me, because then it stops me from feeling like I'm going to lose something if it doesn't work. I've tried things that didn't work. But the greatest thing is I got to use the wisdom and knowledge of what didn't work and apply it to what I was doing at that moment. So that's one of the things that has helped me, is that it's never wasted, it's stored up. The second thing is that if you're clear on where you're going, and in the book I talk about making your purpose bigger than your problem, and we talked about that in one of the previous lessons. When your purpose, when whatever the venture or whatever the thing that you're doing is, and the purpose of it is big, the problems won't get it. The problems won't stop you. They'll actually be gasoline to help it get bigger. But when your problem becomes so big and the purpose gets small, all of a sudden you can't see your purpose through the problem, because the problem is blocking it. So the two things that I would say is it's never wasted. It's always stored up. It's skill sets. It's lessons that you'll learn that can be applied to the rest of your life. And even if you're in the later years of life or the latter part of your career, it's lessons that you could transfer to your kids and grandkids. So it's never wasted. It's just transferred. The second part of that is we just have to be able to go after it and make our purpose bigger than the problem. Because when that problem gets big, you start not seeing the purpose through it. And that's what I've recognized with leaders, is that it becomes hard because they haven't made the purpose big enough.
So the next scenario that this person proposed is the fear of not knowing what we would be doing next if the current startup failed, because it was hard enough to think of a good idea to begin with.
Yep. Well, this is, I'm gonna give you an example that I think will help. I had a friend of mine who asked me this question about 2 years ago. He said to me, Chad, what happens if the US dollar is worth zero? It was a good question. Probably not very likely, but definitely a good question. And my answer to him was this: yes, the dollars that I have in the bank account is not worth anything. Yes, there's no value in any of the stocks that we own, but that's not my asset. And he said, well, what do you mean that's not your asset? I said, that was never my asset. My asset is the gifts and talents that I bring to the world. So if my gifts and talents are refined, you can take away all of my money and they'll exchange Cocoa Pebbles, if that's the new medium of exchange. I'll just have a lot of Cocoa Pebbles then, or I'll just have a lot of peanuts. Whatever the medium of exchange is, my gift and my talent will open up the door and I'll get opportunity. So one of the things that has happened to me is, because I understand that concept, when people ask me if it doesn't work out, what happens? I said, the business doesn't work out, but I still have the skill set, the talents, and the gifts. Those gifts become really valuable to a company. Those gifts, I know that if my business, now check this out, if my business didn't work out, I know that I can go to a major Fortune 500, Fortune 200 company, and they would pay me more than you could ever imagine to come work at their organization. So now knowing that, because I've developed my skill set and my competency and my gifts and my talents, now I know how to bring it to the marketplace, whether it's from my companies or other companies, it's still valuable. The same way if all the dollars I had in bank accounts were no longer valuable, that wasn't the asset. The asset was the person who produced it. Does that make sense?
It does. And that actually, so this person had a third point, and you touched on this a little bit, and we'll see if you have anything else to add to it. But this third point was, what is the best course of action if failure occurs based on something you had no control over? So like the economy, the dollar being devalued, something, like you were just talking about in that scenario. Yeah. So yeah, what's your best, is there anything that you want to add with what is a best course of action when there's something that you have no control over?
There's three things that I would say leaders have to do to excel and reach potential. The first is IQ. They have to make sure that they have a good IQ. They got to be smart. They got to be able to memorize. They got to be able, all the things around IQ. But I will tell you this, and I was just doing a leadership teaching just earlier this week, last week, I mean, and I was sharing about IQ is not as important as it used to be. Now, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not as important as it used to be, and I'll tell you the reason why. I can go on ChatGPT, and the things that people used to think was valuable when I would share, ChatGPT gives it to me in 20 seconds at even a higher level of accuracy. So not saying IQ is not important, but it's not as important as it used to be. So to answer that question, I would make sure that I'm understanding how my personal IQ and my relationship with technology can become one, so that I'm able to make sure that my IQ and everything I do is at a high level, and I have access to data that is very important to make good decisions. I tell people now, AI is like having free MIT graduates at your company. It's like, literally, think about it. MIT graduates at your company, the highest level, Harvard graduates. Now picture having them at your disposal at any time, because AI gives you access to that. That's IQ. EQ. So I would be developing these three things. And I do this personally, because it doesn't matter what happens in the world. These three things are going to be needed. IQ plus technology. EQ is emotional intelligence. So IQ is the intelligent quotient. EQ is the emotional quotient. And the EQ is, how do I manage stress? How do I make decisions? How do I express myself? How do I have good relationships? How do I perceive myself? Those are the 5 things to help me develop in my EQ. But then there's the last part, is my AQ, the adaptability quotient. And the adaptability quotient is, how do I prepare for change? How do I become aware of change? And then how do I benefit from change? You see, anticipate, prepare, and benefit from change. If I can anticipate, prepare, and benefit from change, then you want to know what's going to happen is, if I'm using technology plus my God-given IQ, now it's going to be very, very powerful. If I'm developing those 5 areas of my EQ, and I am anticipating change, preparing for change, and learning how to benefit from change, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. I'm going to be able to be okay.
So can you give us some examples on that last piece, the adaptability quotient? Like, what might that look like for a business owner who is trying to develop that adaptability?
So Jenny, I was sharing in Canada this, I was the keynote speaker, and one of the premiers was there. And I asked this question to the group of, I don't know how many, 600 people that were there. I said, Well, let me take a step back. I first stated this question. I stated this scenario. There was a reporter that had asked Wayne Gretzky. They said, Wayne, what makes you the greatest hockey player? Now, for those of you who don't know Wayne Gretzky, he was the Michael Jordan of the NHL some years back. But they asked him the question, what made him so great? And he said this, and don't miss this part of it. He said, most players are going to where the puck is. I'm always going to where the puck is going. You see, as a business leader, if you're going to where the puck is, especially now more than ever before, if you're going to where the puck is, by the time you arrive, the puck left. Don't miss that. If you're going to where the puck is, so you're skating over to the puck, when you arrive, the puck is not there. It left. And now all you're doing is trying to catch the puck. Adaptability is understanding, where is my industry going? I was just on the phone with a coaching client yesterday. He's the founder of the company, and he has his chief operating officer and CEO on the company of the company there. They're a significant company. They do pretty big business. And I said to them, I said, all right, so you guys have you got success. That's great. Where's your industry going? Because what got you your success is not going to allow you to keep the success. Your industry is changing, it's adapting. So Jenny, most small businesses, they're so focused on getting to the puck that they miss the puck every time because the puck moved. We as small business owners need to be thinking about, where is my industry going, so that I can start building my company to that point. I'll give you another case in point. I was working with a small business owner. They probably have somewhere between 50 to 75 employees. So they're nice size, but they're not huge. And I said to them, what's going on right now in the business? They said, it's always hard getting people to work in the kitchen. I said, well, let me show you this video. I took a video out, and it's an AI-driven robotics kitchen that guarantees 100% of the time the food comes out perfect. This person said, what? I said, that's where your industry is going. Most small business owners are so focused on trying to deliver their product that they miss where it's going. And that's adaptability. If, as a leader, if we can be smart, if we can develop a high EQ, and we can look at where trends and the world is going, we can then be able to benefit from it. But most small business owners are so focused in doing the day-to-day work that they can't think about where the puck's moving to.
So to follow up on that, where are some good places to look for those trends? If somebody says, okay, I want to start looking, I'm on board with Chad has said, I want to start looking for trends. Where are some good places or good ways to go about becoming more aware of industry trends?
Yeah, so our client asked that same question yesterday. The founder of the company, he asked that same question. And this is the answer I gave him. I said, find out where private equity is putting money in your industry. Because they're putting money behind things that they're going to use technology to drive to get the greatest return. That's telling you where the puck is going. You don't need to want private equity money. You don't need to try to get private equity money, but they're paying and they're creating innovation to maximize their return. So why don't you see where they're going and just look at some of the private equity firms and where they're putting money and how they're going after certain companies in your industry, and then start getting some creative ideas. The greatest thing about ideas is that when you get an idea, it sparks another idea, and all of a sudden that's innovation.
So I'll mention too that we have here at the NYSBDC, we have a staff of 4 information specialists who look up this kind of data then. So that is something with which the NYSBDC can help you then. if that's the kind of data you're looking for. And of course, they research all sorts of things related to small businesses and what they need. But yeah, that's something that our research network can assist
I didn't know
with.
that.
Yeah.
I may be using you guys for that.
True story. Come see us at the SBDC, Chad. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I mean, we're working on letting go of the fear of failure. Are there things that you can do as a small business owner to maximize chances of success for different things that you want to try? Do you have any thoughts around that, on how to try to maximize success? Maybe have fewer failures if possible?
No, that's what I was trying to do. Yeah, so I'll say this, Jenny, that the way that I process is probability. So as a business owner, as a leader, we're always challenging, we're always working on trying to get growth, but then we got to balance it with probability. And that's kind of what I would say. If I had to look back at my career, I'm always doing probability testing. And what I mean by that is I'm willing to invest in stuff that other people are not willing to invest in, and I'm willing to wait because I know when it works at such a huge level. So I'll give you a case in point. There's a couple of things that I've been working on and our team has been working on that's not working at the level that I would like it to. But I've already done my probability testing. I did it before I even got into before I put dollars and cents behind it and energy. And I looked at it and I said, I know this is going to take some time. It's going to take, I thought in certain instances, up to 5 years. And I know that we may not see the greatest return for those first 5 years, but I know it's going to look like this. I don't know when that looks like that. I don't know if it's in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, in year 5, but I know by year 5 it's going to happen. And I think what happens is a lot of business leaders don't probability test. What they do is they see opportunity, they jump in. Opportunity without probability testing is like a person driving a car blindfolded. It literally is. Because what happens is when we see opportunity as a small business owner, we need to be able to recognize the opportunity, but then we need to say, what is the probability that what I saw can actually occur? Most people don't do that, so the failure becomes more imminent because they haven't probability tested. And that's the thing. My wife and I, when we talk, she'll see an idea and I'll probability test. She'll see the idea, I'll probability test. Because if the opportunity is big enough and the time period is long enough and we have enough capital, then I'm very comfortable with it. But if the opportunity is short and the probability is small, and we don't have the capital to support that, well, then that's the likelihood that that's going to work out is very, very, very slim. So now, as a leader, we have to be making decisions of what puts our team and our companies in the best chance of success. And you can't maximize potential without probability testing.
So, out of curiosity, is that something that you ever bring in outside resources to help you understand what your probability might be?
Yeah, yes, I'll bring in some consultants sometimes to be able to see that. And then sometimes it's, you know how we talk about leaders have different gifts and talents? It's a gift and talent of mine that I can probability test. And I can do it with not having all the facts and data. So John talks about that. John Maxwell talks about that leaders are very intuitive of their area of giftedness. There's an intuition in an area of strength. For me, I don't need 90% of the data in my area of strength when it comes to probability testing, I could have 50% of the information and I can process it quick enough to get to an area that a decision of whether I'm willing to move forward, and knowing that this may take 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but when it pops, not only does it pop, but it becomes tremendously valuable. So I would, to your point, Jenny, I would say that yes, bring in consultants or bring in SBDC to be able to help give some data. But as a leader, you also have to be able to know if that's an area that you're strong in, can I rely on my intuition for that? The thing that I'm not good with is timing. So I'm very good with probability testing, but I'm not good with timing. So I've tried to get away from, is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Earlier in my career, I would say in 2 years, and it didn't take 2 years, it took 5 years. Now I try to be able to look at it and say, okay, I know this is going to happen. I can't tell you when. It's probably a 2 to 5 year window, but when it pops, it's super successful for all of us. That's my probability testing. And then I want to bring in consultants like you or Lions Pride and other organizations to come in and maybe help take the time period and make it shorter because I use their knowledge and wisdom.
That makes sense. And I like how you're tying that back to what you're strong in, what you aren't, getting help with what you aren't. We've talked about that in some previous webinars. So I do want to remind people that you can put questions in the chat or preferably the Q&A box. That's the easiest way to keep track of them. But we'll do a few more here before we close for today. So this question is, what are some tools that I could use to help mitigate areas that are not in my control? For instance, in a prime contractor and subcontractor type scenario.
Just read that question again. I want to make sure I heard that because I heard piece. I think I missed something, and I just want to make sure.
Of course. What are some tools that I could use to help mitigate areas that are not in my control, like in a prime contractor, subcontractor scenario?
Yeah. So I have a good amount of experience in the construction world. Our clients do a lot of work in the construction world. So one of the things I'd say when you have subcontractors is you got to interview your subcontractors like you're interviewing a CEO for your company. And the reason why is your ability to perform that contract is based on their ability to fulfill what you're asking them to do. Because let's just look at this as an example. You get an agreement, right? Let's call it $1 million contract. So you have $1 million contract. And then there's all of this scope of work that has to be fulfilled. And then you go to subcontractors to complete pieces of it. At the end of the day, if they don't perform, you didn't perform. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So what I would be doing is I would be creating a very good, thorough process of vetting them on the front end of your subcontractors, so that you can make sure that they have a higher probability of performing the work with higher level of efficacy. What I see in the construction world is, hey, my friend Johnny has a company, check him out. So you give him a shot, but Johnny doesn't have the competency, he doesn't have the infrastructure, he doesn't have the financial capital and bonding requirements that's needed. So you give Johnny a shot, but Johnny really never had a shot because there was no way that he could fulfill that. That's the thing I would think of on the front end, building a whole vetting process to who your subcontractors are. Do they align with your purpose and your vision and your values? Do they have consistency of showing that they get work done on budget, on time? Because at the end of the day, when you put that bid in, that bid is going to require the performance of different subcontractors. That vetting process and that exploratory discovery process on the front end before you give them a contract is so key. So key.
So to follow up on that then, what if you are in the opposite scenario and you are the subcontractor that is working with a prime contractor? How would you handle that scenario?
It would be the exact same thing, reverse engineer it. Because really, at the end of the day, think about this. If you're the subcontractor now, and you've done phenomenal work, but the general contractor was hired for the job dropped the ball, has ethical issues, you are going to have ethical issues because you are associated. So it really is. It's both sides. If you're a general contractor, you want to vet that subcontractor. If you're a subcontractor, you want to vet the general contractor, because not all business is equal. Getting business from them and then your reputation is ruined because you did a great job, but they dropped the ball. It's going to come back to you anyways, because when they think about that subcontractor, they think of your company.
So we've talked about the vetting process. What about, and I mean, this would apply to any business working with another business. What about when, the agreement has been signed, you're moving forward? Are there things that you can do while in an interaction with another business to help optimize chances of a successful outcome in that shared work?
Yeah. Well, the thing I would say like this, and this is a whole nother conversation. We could probably do a whole series on this, but the thing I'll say, Jenny, is that think about this, when I'm just going to take this for a moment and bring it to an employer. When someone's coming for an interview, they are in their best behavior. Everything looks perfect. They're pristine, because they're giving you their best. And I can tell you this, it's never going to be better than that moment. Now, they may grow and develop, but they're going to be on their best behavior. It's no different when you have a subcontractor or you have a general contractor and they need you to perform their work. They're going to come to you and they're going to be on their best behavior. You got to do your due diligence. You got to look into seeing how they've performed in the past. You got to look into seeing, do they have a good reputation and a good name? One of the things I'll share is, I say this to my team. I said, guys, my main thing is, one day when my nieces and nephews come into our business, the last thing I ever want them to have to deal with is my uncle and my aunt screwed you for dollars and they have to deal with the problem. I said, I want to do things in a way that's ethical on the front end, so that when one day our kids or our nieces and our nephews come into this business or businesses, they don't have to hear your uncle was such a slime. That would be the worst thing my nieces and nephews would ever have to hear, is that people would badmouth my wife and I because we didn't do things ethically. So that being the case, we want to do our due diligence with people on the front end. We want to do our due diligence and really see who they really are. See, do they have infractions? Do they have violations? Do they have lawsuits? One of the things you want to find out, and I don't know how you can figure this out, but I have ideas, but I'm not sharing it, is have they been in lawsuits? Do they sue everyone? Listen, and I'll share this and we'll wrap up. I had someone many years ago, Jenny, they shared this little story. It was cute, but it really impacted me. They said, there's a frog and a spider, and the frog and the spider are on the one side of the lake. And the frog says to the spider, hey, I'm going to swim over to the other side. So the spider says to the frog, hey, you think I could jump on your back? The frog looks at the spider and says, never, not happening. So the spider says, why? He said, because the second that you're on my back and we start swimming, you're going to bite me and I'm going to drown. He said, the spider says, think about what you just said. He said, if you drown, I drown. The frog says, yeah, that makes sense. Jump on my back. Starts swimming towards the other side and bites. The spider bites the frog, and the frog looks back as it's drowning and says, why'd you do that? And the spider says, I'm always going to be a spider. And the theme of that is that when we look at people's past, it doesn't mean that they can't improve, but there's a high probability that their past will be predictors of their future when it comes to ethics. Not when it comes to like they tried something and it didn't work. Ethics. If they were unethical, if they had like 10, 15 lawsuits, not one lawsuit, everyone can have a bad day. But if they had 10 of them and 15 of them, what makes you think that when you jump on their back, or when they jump on your back, they're not going to bite you? The past can be a nice predictor for the future. So I just share that with you. Obviously, I put up the YouTube channel. I'd love for people to just join our channel so that they can keep hearing some good videos every week.
Well, thank you, Chad. And I mean, you brought that even back to probability testing as well, of what's the probability of a good relationship here. So thank you.
It
Well,
really is all probability testing.
yeah. So Chad, it has been amazing to hang out with you for an hour every week. And I'm very grateful for everything that I have learned. And I am so grateful that you were willing to come and share all of this information with our audience. I know that there are so many insights that people can take away from these 7 sessions, the 10 topics and 7 sessions that we have done. And we're just, yeah, thank you for that. And so yeah, if you want to keep in touch, keep hearing from Chad, he's got his YouTube channel there. You also have that survey, and I believe, I think you put out a newsletter as well, don't you, Chad?
Yep. Yeah, we do our best to add value to the people that are in our network. So with our newsletter, if they email info@Lions Pride Leadership, we can add them to the newsletter. So if it's info@Lions Pride Leadership, just put add to newsletter. We'll be able to add you onto the newsletter. And then scan the QR code and you'll be able to get some leadership principles, leadership videos every week.
Right. Well, thank you. And I will remind everybody that we have a survey that will show up as I shut off the webinar today. If you have a few minutes, we appreciate your feedback. We want to know what business owners need and what can best be helpful to you as you are out there trying to give value to your communities through your businesses. And we appreciate all of you who have joined us for this series. And yeah, I wish everyone the best as you go out to work on implementing some things that maybe have stuck for you from throughout this series. Remember that we do have the recordings as well. So at any time, if you want to come back and, review anything, it's there for you and will be available as a continuing resource.
Yeah.
And yes.
And Jenny, I want to thank you. You've done a phenomenal job of just leading this discussion and adding value to people. So kudos to you and the team and Sonia and everyone.
Well, thank you. It has been my pleasure. It really has. And a great experience for me as well.
Awesome.
All right. Have a lovely rest of your day, everyone. And best wishes as you go forth to continue to develop as a leader and to develop your companies. And feel free, if you have questions or need further information, you can always email learning@nysbdc.org. With those further questions. And you will get a follow-up email as well, and you can always reply to that too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.